Hello, and welcome to the Marina Bay 880 Homeowners Association Conversation Starter Part 2. Again, I'm Mary Ritchie, and I decided to host a second session because really I want to keep each one of them to 3 points, and in order to keep them short and sweet, easy to watch and watch all the way through. So again, this is an open forum for sharing thoughts and ideas, and I want to thank everyone for watching, everyone that had watched the previous part one and reached out to me with their thoughts, their ideas, their comments. It was very much appreciated. It was exciting to see people respond back to me. So thank you. And why do we want to do this? For the very reasons we just want to share information between ourselves, amongst our neighbors, and we want to understand what's happening so we can make better decisions. And always participation creates opportunities to make a difference and to strengthen our community. So the 3 points I want to talk about today are, once again, I'm sorry, numbers focused, but I wanted to take a closer look at the remediation project numbers, what's going on with the Master Association, and the reserve budget. First of all, let's talk about the remediation project. You know, as I said the first time, boy, wouldn't it be great if we had an understanding of where we were with the remediation project? You know, we know we had a settlement, but if we really understood how much money we spent to date, what are the bids, what are the phases, you know, where are we tracking so that we don't have any surprises? The worst thing that could happen is have a surprise next year that says there's got to be an assessment in order to complete the project. Nobody likes those surprises. So I think if we start tracking this, I mean, I strongly feel that if we start tracking this early and often, it'll give us that opportunity maybe to avoid that. I know this isn't perfect, and that's why I want to start the conversation around what do we want to see as a group? You know, what information do we feel like we want to have? How often do we want to have that information? What do we think we can do with that? So with that said, I'm just going to show you what I've put together to date, just as kind of a starting gate. As again, this isn't perfect, but you know, just kind of as a starting gate. I'm sure the Management Association has a much better idea on how to present this. And of course, they have a lot more information available to them in order to complete this. But this is what I have so far. And that is that, you know, we have the $3 million. We've made some interest. We've spent about this much so far on the external water intrusion on one of the buildings. That includes the tile that was purchased. We've also spent $22,000 for the lift, sidewalks, and stairs. However, I have no idea if this is the total amount that needs to be spent, or if there's another part two or more to be spent, or what the bid was, or anything like that. This is just information that I could pull from what has been spent and a guesstimate there. And finally, I think everyone should be aware that we paid our property insurance out of our remediation project funds. We paid $301,000, almost $302,000 in property insurance for the next year out of the remediation project. So that's over 10% of the total award. And so I just wanted everyone to I just wanted to point that out to everyone. I think we probably should have a conversation about is that going to be okay? Can we afford to take 10% of the budget to pay for an operating expense and still come out okay? And I think those are just conversations we need to have a better understanding, or what is the plan to get that money back into the remediation project? With that said, you know, we also had some pre-phase money that we had to spend. You know, that included, we did some water intrusion work before the project even started. Of course, our engineering fees, our legal fees, our mediation services, and these were all paid out of our operating funds, about $239,000, $240,000. So I think the conversation here would be, are we expecting the remediation project to be able to reimburse or pay to the operating fund these expenses that we incurred, or are these not part of that budget and we just need to understand that so we all are on the same page? Again, that's just my thoughts on the remediation project and how to start that conversation around what is expected and what information is expected. Now let's talk about the Master Association. You know, if you remember last year, we had a comment regarding the 25 budget that the Master Association was going to pick up the landscaping and gate repairs costs. And if we think about it, you know, we didn't have a budget amount for landscaping or gate repairs, but we did, you know, have a larger budget amount for the Master Association. But now I noticed this year, we're kind of back to where we were pre-25. So this is about what the Master Association budget was before that date. But now we have landscaping back in our budget. We have gate repairs back in our budget. And if you look at what actually happened this last year is that we had landscaping costs and gate repairs, but the Master Association wasn't as hasn't been, we haven't spent as much on the Master Association as we thought we were. So with that said, I just want to understand, and maybe some here have a better understanding about what the Master Association is, what the expectations are from the Master Association, what can we expect, what kind of budget numbers can we expect moving forward. So if people have that information, let's please share with the group. And maybe I'm the only one that doesn't understand that, but I think it's worth the comment or worth the time to have a conversation about what should be our expectations going forward from this Master Association. And finally, the reserve budget. If I remember correctly, last year when we had the large increase in the reserve fund, it was because of the Florida changes in the law. But what was stated is that we've completed our studies. This shouldn't be an increase in the reserve fund. It should hold steady or maybe even possibly go down because we were going to combine all the line items into just the structural. We were going to have one budget amount for structural, so that should save us some money, so that our reserve fund should go down. The need for our reserve fund budget amount should go down. But what happened is it actually went up $30,000. And so I would kind of like to have a conversation about how did we come up with that $30,000 increase? Is it because we've spent some funds out of the reserve funds and it didn't increase any life of the building? And how do we go about deciding what's to be spent out of the reserve fund or the remediation project at this point? Because I know these couple items here look like they should be remediation money. But I just, it wouldn't be great if we could have a conversation so we could all understand how do we arrive at that reserve fund number? How do we decide what's being spent out of the reserve fund versus a remediation fund versus the operating fund? And if somebody has that understanding, that is great. Let's talk about it. Let's make sure that we all stay on the same page, because, when we're all on the same page, it just means we have a stronger community. And then we can start talking about more exciting things and have conversations around more exciting things than just numbers. With that, I'm going to share my information with you again. Again, I really appreciate the people that have watched the video, reached out to me, and had their own questions. I feel like sharing this information has been helpful. So that's why I did a second little group here of 3. I think this will be it for a little while unless something comes up. But I hope we can move this forward with sharing ideas and thoughts to start conversations. With that, thank you, everyone. Again, I think this is a great community with a great group of neighbors. And if I can do something to help strengthen the community, I want to do that. So thank you again. Have a great day or enjoy your evening.